This is the Motherlands Podcast. The intention of this podcast is to provide evidence-based information related to fertility, pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum, as well as share positive birth stories. I am your host, Keely Semler. Most new parents I speak to tell me how incredibly intolerant our culture can be towards families. However, when our country is so fixated on capitalism, it makes sense. It keeps many of us in a relentless psychological loop of needing more. What I find so beautiful is the strength and courage it takes for someone to say, despite the cultural and financial obstacles one must overcome in starting a family, I'm still choosing to do so. It illustrates the point that having a family is not merely a logical choice. I had the opportunity to sit down with Michelle Pellizzon, the founder of Holisticism and the co-host of the 12th House Podcast, to hear her perspective on life after having a baby. In particular, how she relates to work, the fears and stigma around being a parent, changes in intimacy, and of course, we finish our conversation with the story of her son's birth. If you enjoy this episode or any of the other episodes of Motherlands, I would be forever grateful if you left a rating and a review. Your son is almost 1 now,
Oh my
right?
God. Yeah, dude, he's 10 and a half months old.
Oh my gosh. How would you make sense of the last year of your life? What a loaded question.
Yeah, with him out of the womb. And not to be dramatic, but my entire life changed. And not because my center of gravity changed necessarily, but I basically lost all ambition. And I don't say that to freak anyone out, but the drive and ambition that I had my entire life, it was like it fell out of me, like a poop or something. It just was out of my body. I had to find a new motor. Because my ambition had been my motor for so long of I've got to succeed. I have to prove my worth. I need to show XYZ. I want to do things to prove to myself I can do them. That no longer was important. Now it's just about, well, how would I want to kill time down here? That was my big 9-month pregnancy revelation. I was
and by killing time down here, you mean
exist
on Earth?
Yeah. No.
What's the purpose of life?
Literally.
Because the purpose of life maybe isn't just about career.
Shocker. Yeah, and it's not like I didn't know that, but I had this revelation moment. You know when you have some watershed ideas that just pop in your brain, you're whoa, now I can't see the world differently. I remember where I was when I realized there wasn't one soulmate on this planet for me. I remember where I was when I realized I could have more than one job. I remember where I was when I realized oh, my business that I'm making doesn't have to be the thing. I can do so many things. This doesn't have to be the thing. For me, it was, oh, we're just killing time down here on this planet. How silly that we forget that I could do anything. How do I want to spend my time? These are all just hobbies. Some hobbies involve being the president of the United States. That's a pretty involved hobby. But it's a hobby. You spend a lot of time working towards that thing and practicing it and doing it with your little decisions and your red phones, How do I want to spend my time down here? And what experiences do I want to try on and do and be? And how do I want to approach them? That hasn't made me want to quit my job. It makes me just want to look at my work differently, approach it from a different perspective. So I think my work, but also just every moment that I want to spend differently. So that's been the biggest adjustment with Rhodes is how am I spending my time?
Rhodes is your son.
Rhodes is my son, yeah.
Named after a beautiful piano.
Yes. And also, of course, he rocks. He's so cool. And I think I was really scared I'm 35. I'm going to be 35. I was really scared for all of my 20s and 30s that everyone says that being a parent is so hard and you lose yourself and it's the worst, but it's the best, but it's the worst. And you're going to hate your husband and you're never going to sleep and your boobs will be ruined, but it's so worth it. My expectations for being a mother and having a child were on the floor. It wasn't something that I was I'm dying to do this.
Let's bookmark. I don't want to cut you off, but yeah. I vividly recall standing on the corner with you in Silver Lake, I don't know, circa 2017, 2018, and probably. You said, I don't ever want kids.
Yeah.
I don't want kids. I don't want anything to do with that. not my shtick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing to hear your perspective now and see how that experience transformed you, but it's not your identity.
Yes.
It's just a beautiful facet of your life now.
I think that's what I was afraid of and why I was like, I don't want that.
You don't just want to be a mommy?
Yeah. And like society, I don't want to be like condescending if that's what someone wants to be. But like society kind of doesn't give women in a way like an option not to be. We were talking about paid family leave very briefly. I get why people, their identity is a mother, because like it's really hard to like also have a job or run your own business or do anything else because your value is as like this parent. You've produced something, right?
And also, I think our culture is so not friendly to mothers.
Oh my God, yeah. It is
like
crazy.
Our culture doesn't value mothers, doesn't value children, certainly doesn't value women's bodies.
People look at me differently on business calls when they know I'm a mom versus when they don't. And
Tell me about that.
So when I was pregnant, and like now we're in Zoom world, they don't see your body for the most part. So I was doing a lot of calls with men in the middle of my pregnancy because I was working on some new projects. When they would find out I was a mom, the conversation would change. The way they would email me would change. They cared less. It was almost like they were like, oh, she's not going to follow through with this thing. She's like going to have a kid. She's not reliable.
Wow.
Like the baby is going to be the thing that she cares about. It was super interesting. You know, I only have my experience, so I don't really know. I don't have a control to gauge against, right? The only control I have is like how men have treated me in the past or how people have treated me in the past as a single person. I didn't take my husband's name when we got married. As a single woman running a business. Men totally treated me differently. Women, if they had kids, were way nicer. They could breathe, which is cool. Some younger women, I think, take me less seriously because I think that they're like, oh, you just care about being a mom. Like,
wow.
you don't get the like drive that I have as like a business owner. And I'm like, bro, yeah, I do. Trust me.
Been there, done that.
I get it. I totally get it. Like, and I also totally can relate to being them and being like, yeah, but you're like a mom and you're like, you don't want to work all day and like, you don't have the time to do XYZ thing. Like,
prior to having a child, do you think how you conducted yourself in a professional or business setting, people took you more seriously than? Wow.
Yeah, because your focus is only on one thing. That's not true, right?
It's funny because I sit on the other end of the spectrum, and maybe that's because I work with so many families. Mm-hmm. I almost feel like people take me less seriously because I don't. Well, but I'm a doula, so maybe it's like...
Because you don't have kids?
Mm-hmm.
You haven't yourself gone through it? But okay, listen, I think that's dumb. And here's why. Because I'm going to say some maybe controversial things. If you're a parent, let's use something that I'm going through right now, which is sleep training, okay? There's like all these people who are quote unquote infant sleep experts. No, they're not. They have 2 kids and they've gotten 2 kids to fall asleep, their kids. And then they decided they wanted to coach on it or blog or whatever. And they haven't ever worked one-on-one with people before, but they have their 2-child experience. What's that saying? This isn't my first time at the rodeo. It's just my second time. It's still not very many times. I'm not saying that I don't respect the experience that you've had, but you do not have a large enough sample size, in my opinion, to be an expert. You have your 2 kids. That's why the people get fucking pissed off when their mother-in-laws give them advice about raising children, right? It's like, you've only done it one other time.
But I'm going to say, even if someone is an expert, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for your child.
And that too, exactly. I guess from a doula perspective, so my doula had given birth, but she was a surrogate. So she didn't raise children in a traditional way. She's the aunt to the child that she gave birth to.
That's amazing.
Amazing. Oh my God.
Very special.
Yeah. So like, what an incredible person. But I wasn't like, oh yeah, you've never been a mom before. Like, first off, I'm not hiring her to like teach me how to be a mom. Second, like, okay, she gave birth once. She has her one experience. There's infinite things that can happen when you give birth. What I care more about is she's assisted over 1,000 births. That's what I care about. You've seen some shit. You have a ton of experience. Like,
and you also don't know better. You're just witnessing birth happen in
You have a larger sample size.
So many different ways.
Yes.
I've never seen the same thing play out twice, and I don't think I ever will.
And yes, and it's also like birth isn't like a step 1, then step 2, then step 3. It's like circle, then purple, then maybe step 1, and then, like there's not, it's just a jumble.
Yeah, it's not like some secret formula. And the same thing with child rearing. Are you willing to share what your thoughts are on sleep training?
I feel like it's extremely controversial, but I will say what doesn't make sense to me is being told to be in tune with my child, to attend to their needs, to teach them how to be. Right? Teach them how to be in the world and how to feel safe during the day, but not at night. And now Rhodes is old enough, I think, where he can maybe start to understand if I say, hey, we're here, you're safe, you're in your bed, I'm going to sleep next to you. Or like, but this is where you sleep at night. But even as I say that, I'm like, to what end? Like, why? It's mostly for me. It's mostly for me so I can have like 3 more hours of doing whatever random fucking shit I do at night.
Well, that is what sleep training is. Yeah. It's more for the parents, which, hey, if that works for your family, then that's what you need to do. I'm not here to say someone shouldn't sleep train if that's what they need for their family. If people have to work and they need to sleep, then that might be something that they need to do. But to say that all families should do it in the same way, that's where I'm like, yeah, no, you lost me.
Exactly. I'm really lucky. I have this amazing husband who's like an incredible partner and father. And he's like down. He's down to clown. And the stuff that I care a lot about, he's like, you care a lot about it. Okay. It's important to you. And someone recently told him like, oh yeah, you guys need to sleep train. So they bought us a sleep training book, this person, and they sent it to us. Because we are also like, are we messing our kid up by not sleep training him? Because the sleep training industry tells you got to teach him how to sleep. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. That's a natural biological thing. We would die if we couldn't. We don't have to teach him how to eat. We don't have to teach him how to drink water. He like knows how to do it. I mean, he's not like great at it. He spills an entire cup on his face.
He's still practicing.
But he knows that he's thirsty, right? Like you don't have to be like, hey bud, that's thirst that you're feeling. He gets it. It's natural. So like, why do I have to teach him how to sleep? I don't get that. The sleep training book, it makes your child the antagonist. Like they're this little rotten thing trying to get away with cuddling you, the audacity, and getting you to pay attention to them when they need something. And when they're scared, they want you to comfort them. Can you fucking believe it?
How dare they?
And they need to learn that you're the one in charge. That's what the tone of this book is. And I'm just like, this is weird. And also, of course, I'll get off my diatribe about sleep training, but from what I understand, children can't learn how to self-soothe. Infants cannot learn how to self-soothe. So when I see that in a book, or when I see a sleep trainer say, your kid has to learn how to self-soothe, it's just an immediate no for me, because I know that's not true. So anything else you say, even if it is true, it's really hard for me to believe.
Well, I think some of these books fail to mention, if you are planning to implement some of these training strategies, why are we ignoring neurological development? Because a newborn is very different neurologically than an 18-month-old or a 12-month-old. And, I've had a couple clients ask me what my thoughts are. And honestly, it doesn't matter what I think about it. Like, I think it's a journey as a new parent, figuring out what works for you and your partner. Has anything surprised you about being a mother? Like something that you hadn't even considered, and now you're like, whoa.
My answer when people ask me that typically is just like, it's so much more fun than I ever thought it was going to be. Like a 1,000 times more fun, more interesting, not as exhausting. And like, we have a great kid. We have a really good baby. So
all babies are good.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. When people would ask me, oh, is he a good baby? And I'd be like, no, he's trying to sneak out of the house and smoke cigarettes. He's terrible. The gender roles playing out has been like so interesting and surprising. I felt that when I got married too, like those natural gender roles and the like things that wives nag their husbands about. That's coming up in my life, but I'm a feminist, and like I'm a forward-thinking person. And
can you give an example of like how it plays out if you feel?
Yeah, of course. This is like a silly, simple one, but just like laundry. And my husband does laundry, but everything's stained. I'm like, okay. I actually wrote out instructions for doing the laundry because, because like our shit kept getting ruined because everything would just get thrown like a college kid into the laundry machine and then in the dryer. It gets done, but at what cost? Mm-hmm. That's kind of a mom thing, right? Like, yeah, I can ask someone else to do it for me, but they're not going to do it right or the way that I want it to be done. That's been really interesting. Also, when Rhodes was younger, soothing him, I would notice that my husband wouldn't talk to him. He'd just be like in work mode. Should I do this? Should I do this? Just like instead
how to get him to like just stop crying as opposed to
exactly. Or like jump to like the super extremes of like, should we try the windy, which is like this thing that you stick up their butt, to like help them release gas. Did you say it's okay and maybe pat him a little bit? And, now he stopped crying. Okay.
And talk to him.
Yeah. Maybe walk outside the room for a sec with him, maybe take him outside for a sec. I was really surprised that those things seemed to come more naturally to me than they did to my husband. I think moms are like down to try a bunch of stuff, right? Like, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, let's go back to this. And maybe in my experience of dads, it's more like everything looks like a hammer or nail when you got a hammer, right? When you got a windy, everything looks like a butthole and like a gas problem.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I'm curious, have you seen that as a doula? Like gender roles come up a lot or be reinforced?
Yes, I have. I'm also going to be transparent. I find that I'm in a very interesting field. I can't do my job without a female body.
Yeah.
But whether someone identifies with the female body or not, I don't care.
Yeah.
Tell me what you want to be called.
Yeah.
If pronouns matter to you, tell me your pronouns.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be called a mother or a pregnant woman, you want to be called a birthing person, I will call that for you.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to erase the entire population of women that I support that do identify as a mother, that do identify with their breasts and their vagina.
Oh my gosh.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I have been a doula for same-sex couples. Anyone could be a parent. I don't care what parts you have, but I'm not going to erase birthing people and mothers, breastfeeding and chest feeding. But
okay, that one I don't
do you know
get.
what I mean?
Yeah, because, sorry, not to be crazy, but it's all, men have breast tissue.
That's right.
So I'm not picking up what we're throwing down here because I'm sorry, but I'm really not trying to be difficult, but like, it's all breast tissue. Like, it's not gendered. Breasts are not inherently gendered. Sexualizing breasts, maybe that's gendered, but whatever. If you want to call it whatever you want, call it whatever you want.
And it's kind of like a very dark gray area in my world. Either you are like pro mama and like woman, or tell me your pronouns please, and all birthing bodies. Like, why have we lost out on our ability to see that there's just this huge spectrum of in between there? Anyways, I'm going on a tangent, but yes, I do see gender roles play out in traditional heterosexual couples, and then it comes up in really funny ways in same-sex couples too.
Yeah.
And however you cut it, it's all work.
Yeah.
It's all work. And I think that one thing that is not talked about a lot, and I see a lot of my clients struggling in the first year, is how they relate to their partner sexually and intimately.
Yeah.
That's not talked about. And then the woman or whoever birthed the baby feels like a fish out of water. Like, I used to work and now I don't. And now it's only up to me to figure out how to get it back to what it was before, which, by the way, it's never the same again, but that doesn't mean that it has to be shitty.
Right.
It's just different.
I feel like you came by when Rhodes was, I don't remember how old he was, but
he was little.
He was little. And I don't remember if I told you about that I was like extremely worried about having uterine prolapse. Did I tell you all about that? I wish I had heard this before I gave birth because, damn, what a journey. I did not work out when I was pregnant because I was really sick and I also got really, really swollen. I couldn't fit into shoes starting at like month 7. It was crazy. My ankles were insane. I couldn't really stand for that long without being really uncomfortable. So I didn't really work out.
Not everyone works out in pregnancy. So if that's you, just listening, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I used to run ultramarathons. So like, I'm not a
couch potato?
A lifelong couch potato. Yeah. Like I totally thought I would be the person who worked out their pregnancy and I wasn't. And like, whatever, who cares?
Was it hard for you though not to be?
A little bit, because I wanted to like walk around, and I'm an active person, but it just was so crazy uncomfortable. I had horrible back pain, whatever, as many like hypermobile people do. So I was a little worried about like my pelvic floor, and like I was really working on strengthening my pelvic floor like before I gave birth, and I gave birth vaginally. Like a couple days after labor, when I was home, I had someone come and do belly binding for me. And while she was doing the binding, she was like, oh, by the way, one of the reasons it's so good is because you'll be able to tell if you have uterine prolapse. And I was like, how will I be able to tell from this? She's like, oh, you'll feel it. It'll feel like there's like a heavy tampon in. And doing this belly binding can like help you sense that earlier. Then of course I was like, it's like saying don't think of a pink elephant, and I'm like, all I can do is be like, oh my god, is my uterus gonna fall out? Like, what's going on here? I really felt like things were off, things were wrong. It's 5 days since I've given birth. Like things are weird. They're a little weird in there, but it was really uncomfortable, and it did kind of feel like I was wearing a heavy tampon or something, especially when I was wearing like clothes that were tighter, like if I was wearing pants versus a dress. I like called my doctor crying at 6 weeks, and I was like, I'm worried that like my uterus is going to fall out. And she's like, can you see anything? Is it like, I was like, no, everything looks normal. And she's like, then you're probably okay. And you're going to just have to wait until, your appointment with me, because I can't stick stuff up there that early. So I finally went in, and she looked around, and she was like, no one ever asks for a full pelvic exam. This is at Kaiser. I was like, well, I feel like I might have uterine prolapse. And she's like, okay, yeah, let's take a look. And she's like, things are a little bit like your bladder's pushing some stuff out of the way a little bit, but it's not bad at all. It's like not even a degree 1. It's really, really light, but you should probably like get some pelvic floor physical therapy. You actually have dysfunction in other parts of your pelvic floor. It seems like a little tighter than it should be. And she's like, it's great. It's wild. I never do this to new moms because no one ever asks for it, but really we should. It's like, yeah, it seems like it. So I went to pelvic floor therapy for a couple sessions, and
was it helpful?
Ish. I mean,
did you feel more aware of that area of your body?
I actually just felt relief that someone was acknowledging that my pain was real. Because when she would press on different areas and I would have pain, she's like, oh yeah, that's tight. Or like, there's pain there, and here is why. And you're cleared to have sex at 6 weeks, which is crazy. The last thing I wanted to do was have sex, and sex was painful when I started having it. And to just have someone else be like, yeah, that's because things are kind of still a little bit fucked up. Part of it's going to be you should do some therapy, and the other part is like,
let it heal.
My doctor told me that your tissue is like almost menopausal when you're breastfeeding because of the hormones. So it's very dry, and it's thinner, and it can be more painful. She's like, as soon as you stop breastfeeding, it'll feel better. Then you get into like, well, how long am I going to breastfeed? Am I going to breastfeed for my baby, or am I going to stop because I want to enjoy sex again? And
both are valid.
Totally. And then you have your partner or husband or whatever, like, who's probably wants to have sex with you, and
probably misses you in that way.
We just stopped breastfeeding. He's 10 and a half months old, and I thought it was...
Did you decide? Did he decide? You both decided together?
It was not... It just kind of like happened that we kind of got sick, and then I wasn't home for like a while, for a day, and he happened to not breastfeed. We like just did a bottle, and it was so anticlimactic. And I was like emotionally grueling over this decision for the last probably 3 months, because I have ADHD, and I'm like supposed to be medicated for it, and I haven't been medicated since I got pregnant. And there's a lot of other stuff I want to do. Get Botox, use retinol again, do some MDMA, and that I obviously can't do while I'm breastfeeding. And it's so selfish to like stop because of those reasons. Like, I need to be there for my baby. And I thought we were going to have this big emotional day where it was like our last time breastfeeding, and I was going to cry, and like, no, didn't happen like that. He just couldn't care less. It was fine. It was not at all dramatic. And part of me is like, should I orchestrate a last breastfeeding moment? And I'm like, no, he's fine. Why?
He's fine, and you're fine.
Everyone's good. The internet had told me it would be so difficult. It would be so emotional. It would be such a big deal. And I'm like,
yeah, that wasn't your experience.
That was not my experience.
Fine.
Yeah.
Well, hot damn, I'm sure someone listening can relate to that, because I think it's almost a career being a breastfeeding mom.
Do you mean like they make it their identity, or like it
Both.
becomes...
Both.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize how much time really I spent breastfeeding until we started doing a bottle. And I was like, why am I like not tired? And I have so much more time in the evening, and I feel good. Like, it's because I have more time to like do me.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. And that's not to discredit all of the amazing benefits of breastfeeding.
And I loved breastfeeding. I had such a fun time doing it. It was so cool. I didn't think I was going to like it so much. I didn't think I was going to do it for as long as I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And even for people that can't breastfeed, I mean, there's such stigma around breastfeeding. Like, if you can't breastfeed, then you're less of a mother. And that is total bullshit.
Yeah.
And you feed your baby with love however you need to, and that's what's right for your family. And then it's like there's all this passive judgment people make around like, how long do you breastfeed? Well, if you breastfeed your baby less than 6 months, then you're, you know what I mean? It's like, come on.
It is weird. And it's not like, I trained to breastfeed, and so it's this like special skill that I've acquired. It's just like my boobs happen to squirt out milk, and they do a pretty okay job at it. Like, and I was able to do it for a while, and my baby was fine with it. You don't get a trophy for it. It's not.
Thank you for saying that.
It just is. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's like, if you can grow long hair, great.
Right.
You can grow long hair. Cool.
Yeah.
Not everyone can.
Yeah.
It's not that deep.
Yeah.
Like,
I love you for that. That's so true. So did you feel isolated in terms of your intimate relationship? Did you feel like your partner understood, or that you like really kind of had to hold his hand and be like, hey, this is going to take some time here?
Yeah. I think he intellectually understood, and then emotionally felt like the baby gets all your attention now. And like, yeah, it's because it doesn't really hurt when, I'm holding the baby. Like, that's not painful for me. He was so supportive through it. Like, especially the first time you have sex is so scary after you give birth.
Yeah.
Like,
are you willing to share a little bit about your birth story and how you prepared for the birth of your son?
Yeah. So we didn't think that we were going to work with a doula. We kind of just were like, let's just see if we can do this thing. I think it'll be okay. And then we realized, no, it's really not going to be okay. We really don't know what we're doing, and we really don't trust our doctors, unfortunately. Although I think like my maternal care leading up to giving birth was fine. I just didn't really feel like heard. I started having like these crazy contractions at like 7 months, and they didn't really know why they happened, and they didn't say anything about it other than like, yeah, you're having contractions. That's weird. Anyways, like, let's just send you home. You seem fine. They stopped eventually. That sort of pseudo emergency, I think, made me and my husband be like, oh, we definitely need someone to like help us through this, because we don't know what we're doing. My husband has medical trauma because he's got a health issue, was in hospitals for it, and just, he kind of like goes into fight, flight, freeze. He goes into freeze. So he really actually was the one who was like, we need a doula. And I really need a doula, because I need someone who can be there to help me, to like bounce ideas off of, to be there to support you. So we worked with a doula. Her name is Camille. She's amazing. And she recommended that we do something called hypnobabies, which I thought it was hypnobirthing, but that's a different thing. And it's
very similar.
Very similar.
Let's be real. That's a
different organizations thing. Probably, right? Yeah. So we did hypnobabies, even though I'm like a witch and into wellness stuff and into weird stuff. I was very skeptical. So we ended up doing it, and I kind of like half-assed it, to be honest with you. You listen to a tape every night, and then you're supposed to like listen to mantras during the day. They have like funny terms for labor, like pressure wave is a contraction, and
hypnoanesthesia.
Yes, exactly. And it's very cheesy, but I did it. We went up to my due date. The day after my due date, I lost my mucus plug on a walk, and then we had to do the silly stuff that one does before you're about to give birth, which is go buy dad some sneakers at the Americana, the brand. So I was like, okay, we got to go get you some sneakers. So let's fucking do it. And then I like had my first contraction in the Nike store.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, whoa, okay, this is happening. Like, we're in it. Cool. Like, you never know if it's going to be the same day as the mucus plug situation. So we just went home to eat dinner, labor. Things started picking up. I started listening to my little tapes. Yeah, about I don't know, probably 3 hours after the labor officially started, I was having contractions like every 2 minutes. So we were ready to go to the hospital, and we went to the hospital, went to Kaiser. There had just been a strike at Kaiser, a nurse strike. And it was also the day before Thanksgiving. So I would say not the best time to give birth. We got into the triage little suites where they hold you until they're ready to give you a room. I was really feeling it at that point. The nurse was like, yeah, we don't have any rooms, so you're just going to have to like be here. We don't have a birth room. So you're just going to hang out here. I was like, okay, cool, great. They put the heart rate monitor on my belly. I felt like they put it in the wrong spot. She couldn't get the baby's heartbeat. So then she moved it down. The baby's heartbeat came through fine. But our nurse was very stern and was like, oh, your baby's in distress. I was kind of like, well, I feel like you didn't really get it in the right spot to get his heartbeat. I don't know if he was like distressed necessarily, because when we moved it down, it was fine. But that was kind of the like mark on our file for the rest of the time we were there, that baby was in distress. And Ethan had asked, can we not do the IV? That put our nurse on just red alert that we were going to be difficult. So she just started to treat us like we were difficult. And
you didn't want an IV because you wanted to kind of be more...
I wanted to walk around. Yeah. My like loose birth plan was to labor as naturally as possible for as long as possible, to not go to the hospital until I needed to not get an epidural until I needed to, so that we didn't have to have any
unnecessary interventions.
Exactly. Yeah. Try and do this thing as clearly as we could.
Did they check you when you arrived in triage?
And I was like 1.5 centimeters, so not far along at all. Then things really picked up pretty fast, and I was having contractions every 90 seconds, and I was throwing up with every contraction. The original doctor who had come in and who had seen me when I was at 1.5 was like, we'll check you in like 4 hours probably. And I was really sick. Like I was, you've seen it. You've seen what happens. I was throwing up like the fucking exorcist dude. It was horrible. And like,
it was probably helping that baby come down.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I was like, please check. Please check me. I think that like it's time to check. And she's like, well, it's only been an hour and a half. I don't think like okay, fine, we'll check. And I was at 4 centimeters. So I was ready for drugs, and they didn't have a room. So they said, we can't give you an epidural for another like probably 4 hours. So we can give you some morphine. And at that point I was so miserable. I was throwing up. None of the like anti-nausea medication was working. I was like, fine, whatever. Just like give me anything, because I can't even lay down. Like I'm just, this sucks. It's labor. Morphine worked really well for the pain, but I think it really slowed my labor down. It was a real bummer that we couldn't get into a room earlier. It was just administrative stuff that kind of...
Did they ask you if you wanted to be admitted, or they just said, we're admitting you? Like usually when a patient shows up and they're not in what's considered active labor, they might say to the patient...
No, they didn't ask. They were just like, we're admitting you.
Oh, wow.
In hindsight, I think there are a lot of things that were happening, like a lot of nurses who were upset, a lot of people who were working who were upset, a lot of people who wanted to get out before the holiday and not be working over the holiday. And
they sounded busy, like totally swamped.
Definitely busy. So yeah, so hung out for a couple hours until like, 2 a.m. where they could give me an epidural and put me in a room. Then things were great. Slept a little bit. Woke up in the morning. I was still at 4 centimeters, so nothing had moved. Then Ethan went to go get his coffee at like 7 a.m. and I adjusted myself, and they lost the baby's heart rate monitor because the heart rate monitor moved. So everyone rushed in, put me on my hands and knees, and were telling me the baby's in distress. We're going to have to give you an emergency C-section. And it was a doctor I'd never seen before. And, it's scary stuff. I kind of explained, like, I think that it's just that I moved. I think that's why it wasn't reading the way that it was reading before, because it had already been marked earlier that he was in, quote unquote, in distress. They just were covering their asses, which makes sense. They did the heart rate monitor on his head.
Yeah, and the internal one.
They didn't ask us or tell us that they were going to do that. So that was kind of a bummer. And then the new doctor came in and said, you haven't moved in 12 hours. You are on a countdown clock now, and you're going to have a C-section unless you give birth, unless you are 100% effaced and dilated, and in like the next 3 hours. And so we had called our doula.
Oh, was she with you or not?
No, she wasn't with us. So we called our doula. We kind of told her what was happening, and I was super defensive, feeling like they just want me to have a C-section. And she's like, yeah, I mean, think about everything that's happening here. And also, like, you've been stuck for a while. Like, that's a long time to be stuck. So we're going to do everything we can not to have a C-section, but like, you might have to have it, and that's okay. The most important thing is that your baby's safe. And that's also what I told our attending. Like, they treated us really like we were like resistant people, and we weren't. So yeah, I just said, listen, we all want the same thing. We just want a healthy baby to be born. And like, I don't really care how it happens, but I don't want it to be traumatic, and I don't want to do anything that's unnecessary.
And how about also you just want to be treated like an intelligent human being with some autonomy here?
Yeah, like I want to have some sovereignty in these choices, and like, you've already taken a lot of it away. We are all on the same team, so I don't really get why you're treating me like I'm being like a hostile witness. Like, wow. I don't know, man. Like, it's not like I'm anti anything. Yeah. So I was really upset, and I just had a little moment where I was like, I'm a witch. I'm a dancer. I'm an athlete. I know my body. I know energy, and I know my son. And we can work together and make sure that this happens. Like, if they're going to give me a countdown to like, I have to do things by this time, like, okay, well then I'm going to do the best that I can to get as close to that as I possibly can. So I just spent like 2 hours listening to my dumb little hypnobabies tapes and like giving Rhodes Reiki and like just kind of talking to him and visualizing that things were opening up, and they came in 2 hours later and I was ready to give birth. So I started pushing, and wow. Yeah, it was like amazing. It was crazy. And I pushed for like 45 minutes, and then I got to catch him, and it was like the best ever. It was so cool. And, you know, a lot of things that I wanted, like I was hoping that there would be that fetal ejection reflex that I would feel, and I didn't really feel that. And I asked to wait to push, and they kind of didn't want me to. And, you know, there's like only so many battles that you want to just do what's right. And I don't think I would do it the same way if I ever give birth again, but it worked out perfectly because we have a beautiful baby. He was born with a little wound on his head because he had the heart rate monitor in, and the attending said, "Oh, that's from your vagina." I said, "What? Why is he bleeding? Like, he's a little baby. Like, why does he have?" "Oh, that's from you. That's from you just giving birth to him." They never said like that's from the monitor.
For sure, it was from the monitor.
100%. I saw the little screw. He has a scar that's in the shape of the little screw in.
Oh, he still has it.
He's got a scar, yeah. So that was, you know, just, and like other things like Ethan, it was important to him that we like got all the cord blood. We just like kind of weren't treated, like the attending is on video rolling her eyes at us. Like birth video. Oh, wow. So that was like a bummer, but he was born and he was perfect, and just... And
you did it.
And we did it, yeah.
Did your doula ever show up?
She showed up, yes. She was at the hospital with us, and thank God. She really like helped us through that hard time. I think she helped Ethan a lot, you know, just being my support. And I think it was important to hear her say like, yeah, you have been stuck for a while. Like, these people, they're not crazy, and they're not like against you. Even though it feels like they're against you, they're scared, and they want to just deliver a healthy baby. Yeah,
they want to make sure that the baby's fine. And usually when someone plateaus for a really long time and is totally unchanged for that long, like, we got to look at the state of the baby. How is the baby doing? How is mom doing? If everyone's fine, then you have sort of leverage to keep going. But if baby starts to look a little compromised, and there's so many reasons why after some time babies get tired, and certainly medication can influence that too.
All right, I didn't even mention, of course, they were giving Pitocin. Every time they'd push Pitocin, his heart rate, he would go a little, he didn't like it. So, yeah.
So they gave you Pitocin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then they had to stop because every time they do it, he would be a little distressed.
He's like, knock it off, guys. I'm fine.
Yeah, just let me do my thing. Yeah, it was like totally crazy and amazing. And he's just the best. And giving birth is wild. Pulling something out of you is crazy. Crazy.
Now, did you just reach down and grab your baby, or did someone give you that option?
I just reached down and grabbed him. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was
because I know that most hospitals, unless you have a very special provider, they won't let patients catch their baby. But someone like you who just fucking does it, like, what are they going to do about it? You know what I mean? Yeah. But if you like ask for it.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff, it seems like if you ask for it,
the answer is no.
The answer is no. You just got to do it. Or like, you just have to be like, actually, we're going to wait to cut the cord until it stops pulsing. That was Ethan's big thing. Like, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait. And they kept kind of pushing him to do it. And we had talked about our birth plan with an OB who didn't end up being my doctor the week before we gave birth. And we said we wanted to wait to cut the cord. And she was like, oh, you can't do that. The blood will get sucked out of the baby back into the mother.
That is so not right. That's not accurate.
She said it like that. She said it like, she laughed at us. She's like, you can't do that. That's ridiculous. Who told you could do that? And I probably went into our labor a little with my hackles up because at every turn, it just felt like you're fucking stupid and you don't know what you're doing and just trust us. We know what we're doing. And
we see this every day.
Yeah. And like you do, but you might see labor every day, but I only get to do this once.
Exactly.
Like, I want to trust you, but I also want you to respect me. I totally understand why doctors react that way.
You know, it goes both ways. Like, we live in a very litigious society and they get sued all the time. Sometimes rightly so. Other times not fair. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really difficult time to be a doctor. They don't make as much money.
Nope.
There's a lot of things, and not to justify when they treat patients poorly. I'm not justifying them for that, but I just think that they have a very difficult job.
I 100% agree. And there's also just like so much nonsense on the internet, and people have so much access to the internet now and come in thinking that they know what they want and that they know a lot about birth because they've seen a bunch of TikTok videos for the last 9 months, and
suddenly they're an expert.
Yeah. And like, I get it. It's hard. I think it's hard all around. And I think something that could remedy it is just being able to spend more time with your doctor or whoever is helping you give birth.
And I do think like a lot of people say, well, I wasn't allowed to do this. I wasn't allowed to eat. Mm-hmm. I wasn't allowed to move. You always have a choice. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's why I feel so passionate being a doula, is letting people know like what their choices are, what their rights are, and to let them feel empowered. Like, if you want to eat.
Yeah.
If they say, oh, don't eat because then you're high risk of aspirating, and you are exactly where you need to be for them to deal with that, right. Which, by the way, they're trained to deal with.
Right.
It's barbaric to say that someone can't eat in labor if they're there for 3 days.
Oh my God, yes. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I labored for 26 hours and I didn't eat because I wasn't hungry. But yeah, I did drink a ton of Gatorade. And
that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if I ever have a baby again, who knows if we will, I definitely will do it in a birthing center. The most important thing is that everyone's good. Everyone's healthy and good.
And it's a journey, and you go into it the best that you can with the knowledge that you have, and it's probably not going to be exactly what you think it will be, but that's life.
Yeah, that's show business.
What would be something you would say to yourself looking back on the experience of giving birth or starting a family? What's something you would say to yourself that you know now?
You know, I would actually tell myself to take my time right after the baby had been born and just be us, not try to host in-laws and guests and all the people.
Were you like up running around the house like, what do you want to drink? You want some food?
I was, and I didn't want to be. Like, I verbally communicated, like, I need you to take care of me. I don't really want to be, like, taking care of other people, but
it's hard.
It's really hard.
Family dynamics.
It's really hard.
Really hard. Everyone wants to see the baby.
Yeah. And
hold the baby.
They want to see them when they're fresh.
I always tell my clients when I meet with them, I say, it is your right to say, I don't need you to hold my baby. But I need you to put the dishes away.
Yep. Yeah, you know, there are dynamics with family and even friends. Like, people just don't, you know, they don't always.
Yeah, isn't that funny? I also think people that don't have kids, like, you know, I say to my clients, if you have friends clue them in on what might be supportive to you, like bringing a meal. Like, don't come empty-handed.
Meal train?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Like, don't come empty-handed to go visit a couple that just gave birth. Mm-hmm. Bring something. Even if you don't know what to bring, Google that shit. Like, just quick Google search. Yeah. You'll get some good ideas, you know? And when all else fails, food.
Yes, absolutely. I would say someone set up a meal train for us, our friend Leah, and it was like a lifesaver. It was so helpful for like months afterwards. Like, it was amazing to not have to think about cooking or whatever. But I think that I would just tell my past self, like, you're going to be okay, and you're not going to lose yourself in being a mom. You're going to find yourself. You're going to feel more like yourself than you ever have. And you're also going to be reminded of what's important. So, like, you're going to enjoy your time more in everything that you do. I will say that that's something that really helped me, is working with a consultant to cut down the hours that I worked in my business and like delegate a lot of stuff. That made a huge difference, because I was like pretty miserable right after coming back from maternity leave, like just really overwhelmed. So that helped a ton.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for letting me talk about all this stuff. It's so fun.
Yeah, your story is amazing, and it's been really a pleasure seeing you evolve into Michelle 2.0 with Rhodes.
Yeah, he makes it easy.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share with friends and family, and stay tuned for the next episode.